Awesome. Well, Candice, thank you for taking the time. I think anyone who knows even the slightest bit about you knows how busy you are, how packed your day can be, how many different hats you wear. So,
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate you carving some time. And want to give a little bit of background. So, you grew up in Naperville, Illinois, and I usually record in my room with no background, but I figured it'd be
Yeah.
appropriate to have the Chicago flag behind me today.
Love it. Love it.
Um, Played soccer at the University of Toledo,
Yeah.
got your master's at the University of Illinois in Champaign,
Mm-hmm.
and now you are head soccer coach at Ottawa University in Kansas, coach
Yeah.
for KC Courage,
Yeah.
started Fearless and Capable, and like I said, your day is, sounds super jam packed. And on top of all that, and probably most importantly, you are a mother and a wife, and
Yeah.
I want to do this to get to know the person sitting in front of me a little bit more, and want to know what needs to be included in your day. And if it's not, you kind of go to bed and you're like, okay, like I should have done that, or I should have done this
Yeah.
longer, and you can't wait to do it the next day. Like what's such an important factor in your day that you need to include?
I genuinely love this question, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to steal it and ask other people this. I've never been asked this question, and I think it's fantastic. Oh man! All right, so I would say, undoubtedly, talking to my children, they're like just the pure honesty, the innocence in it. It really reminds me of we all start somewhere and we all have this journey we've made. And, for my children, I know I am really at the beginning of their journey. That journey will be so much bigger when they leave my nest, per se. And I am appreciative of what I was given by my parents, that for me, it's that contact with my kids. Now, I'm not home every day. I will sometimes only see them in the morning because I'm on the fields at night. But, as hard as it is, FaceTime, text messaging, as much as I was reluctant to get them a cell phone, it has been genuinely wonderful to keep that ability just to jump on FaceTime and see them if I'm out of town, or text them if I know I'm headed to the field and not able to jump on a call, and just say, hey, how was your day? Get a response. Love you. I'll see you later. Those things mean a lot, that they know I'm still there and I still care. And so that's probably without a doubt the one thing that has to happen in a day, regardless of anything else. But I also think that if I'm taking on a professional hat, my calendar, dude, I cannot not start the day without looking at my calendar. And if my calendar is missing, and even if I'm, and it's, I don't know if it's productive, it's just my process that works, is I have my online calendar and my handwritten calendar. So I have both. And if they don't match, or, there's something I'm missing with that to-do list, it's absolutely, the day does not happen without looking at my calendar. It's too much to, budget my time, and I block my time on certain things I'm going to work on. And so it's crucial.
It's such a common theme, I think, through handful of episodes now. It's parents. Like, a lot of, pretty much every guest has kind of gone back to their parents. Okay, it started here. The connection I had with them, the support they gave me, that's been kind of the driving force in what they've been able to accomplish. And even myself, I thank my mom for a lot of the habits, character traits I have, and that's why just recently I made it one of my non-negotiables. I have to call my mom or dad every single day, or text them, or do something. A lot of personality traits that you probably carry, that get you through such a busy day. Because you don't just start Fearless and Capable. You don't just get a head coaching job and then become a hard worker. So where did some of these characteristic traits start, that allow you to accomplish as much as you do?
I would say the discipline and, the willingness to understand that a commitment needs to be followed through is 100% from my parents. They just like many, you start something, you have to finish it. Even if you've decided halfway through you don't want to do it anymore, you finish it, and then you can be done with it afterwards. And those lessons, I do instill in my kids. I do. However, I'll have to say I do have some adjustments. And just like I'm certain they have adjustments they made from the parenting that they got, I do have a little bit more leeway to my kids quitting something, because there is this conversation of what serves us that I think we can give children the right, and should give young kids the right to start saying, this no longer serves me, or this is harming me, and I can quit. But with that, I think, really at the end of the day, my parents were instrumental in not just putting those habits into place, but making me own it. Man, like they were not calling coaches. They were not talking to teachers. Like, it was on me to figure out. Now I had to report back what I had figured out. I had to show proof and work through things. But man, they were not going to do it for me. And that was something that I think is a big piece to it. Like I said, for now, like if my kids have something that they're doing and it's not going well, for the most part, like they're going to do it on their own. And I think that voice, I would say that's the biggest thing. I'm pretty loud, naturally. Just, I have strong vocal cords. I've always had it on the field and everything. But my parents certainly gave me that opportunity, that I was doing the work so I could own the narrative. I could say what I wanted or what I needed. And that's really carried. And I had to chuckle last night. I took my daughter and her friend to the local skating rink. Like the school system rented out a roller skate rink or whatever. And my kid, I give her the $20 bill and say, this is what you got. You got to get in. You got to get your skates. You got to get your food. And apparently I had to sign a parent waiver. So I'm kind of reluctant, because I was like, they could go in. Like, they're fine. They don't need me. But all right, fine. I'll walk them in. And my kid just goes up, puts the $20 bill and goes, okay, it'll be the two of me and my friend. And the guy goes, you are the first child to talk to me and tell me and like own up your own words of like what you're here for. And I was like, still my money. But the fact that she could go up and say, here's what it's for and here's what I need. I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, it didn't even cross my mind, but she just did it so confidently, and she's 9, and it's not a huge thing, but it is kind of a huge thing. And I was like, well, that's certainly instilled from what my parents did. And so I think that, the discipline, the work ethic, but the ownership of my voice, was probably something that helped. So now I can control my schedule. After hard work, I can go through things and say, that's right, that's not right, that's fair, that's not fair. And not feel reluctant, but I have to own it. I have to back it up, because those were lessons I was given as a child.
No doubt. Yeah, I mentioned I work for Prep Baseball Report. We host a lot of showcases and tournaments for high school players. One thing I make sure I do before I check players in is I say, hey, players, we're ready for you. We can check you in. And I say players to see who brings their parents along, and there's no judgment either way. I just kind of want to make a mental note of, okay, this player might be the only player that didn't walk up with his parents, and his parents are there, but he's being a little bit more independent than some of the others, and I think that's awesome. So I want to talk Fearless and Capable. Something you started, mentorship program for women in sports, promotes development of women in sports, both professionally, personally, through workshops, events, one-on-one sessions. And I think as best as I can try to explain it, I don't think I would do it any justice. So can you give us a brief, description, and I want to know why, but I also want to know when you decided, because I feel like you might have been asked that a lot. Why did you start Fearless and Capable? Why? But I want to know when you knew the right time was to launch something like that.
All right. So what it is now has been something that's been in the works in a variety of forms, in a variety of just personal beliefs of who I am and what I think sport was missing, or I needed, or I wanted to give, or, whatever question was in my head. So, you know, oftentimes being the only female in the club, in the room, coaching, whatever environment, often one of the few. And I had just moved, and unlike, or should say this is not different from a lot of people, Fearless and Capable really was born out of the pandemic. And, for so many of us that got time to really sit and go, what the heck am I doing with my life? And sit with all the people that, you could really care about and really decide how are you operating and what influences that having on those around you. So at the point in time that the pandemic was going on and just starting, we had been down in Kansas City for, not too long, about 5 months we had been down here. And I was working as an administrator for a state soccer association. And, there was some fulfillment in that. It was one of those things I think I was decent at because I can organize pretty well. I can process, get us from A to B in a pretty fluid way. It kept me talking to soccer type people. I was really in the administrative wing a lot. And man, was I like part-time therapist to some of these people that were volunteers and dealing with, directors. And so I felt like I could be a voice there. I could support them. So I was seeing people not just in the coaching environment, but around it, and particularly women having experiences that I was like, yeah, I've been there. Or yeah, no, I know she was there and this is how she got through it. Or, man, this has to change because, you're one of somebody that's turned over, 3 times in this role in the last year. Something has got to change about how we're looking at the development of females working in sport. And so I'm working in the state association. Things are blowing up just like it was really among, many environments. We didn't know what to do with the pandemic, how to operate, all of these things. And there were some situations that, man, it was evident to me, but it kind of let that like, am I crazy for thinking this is happening before the pandemic, where there's sometimes bias, microaggressions towards my gender, towards, just what I was capable of. But that pandemic, and when people are put up against a wall that they don't know and they have to be creative, they have to be accountable, they have to manage, panic, some high emotions with decisions and data, man, did they put me against a wall and just crucify the snot out of me, because I thought that was the easiest thing they could do to keep friends happy, to keep their, essentially the boys club in a good spot for them. Forget what I was saying was what made sense based off of data, knowing the systems and different things. And essentially, I was like, how much longer do I have to kind of endure and watch all of this happening to females, knowing it was already happening, it's still happening, and it's going to continue to happen? And do I write a book when I'm 70 years old of everything I learned and experienced? I was like, I can't wait 30 years to start trying to create a solution to this. And like I said, this has come out of a few things. So, doing individual, like contacting people and women and trying to be really, hey, forward, how can I help? Where can I help? Can I get into these different soccer spaces or these different avenues of education and so on? And then I created or co-created an Iowa Women in Soccer Alliance. So trying to use my position as a state association. I'm not a club. I'm not a high school. I'm not a college. I'm a neutral party. Can I lead something that helps these organizations feel like there's a space that they can send female professionals, whether it's their coaches, their referees, their administrators, whoever's working for them. There's a network, because likely she's the only one. So how do we help that? How do we give them a support system? But it's a very small community in Iowa, and politics like they do, they're played. And a lot of times I was dealing more often with the leadership. And so this is where we go into the pandemic, and I'm dealing with leaders. I'm giving voice. I'm giving data. I'm giving experiences. And man, I was exhausted. And I literally, so when you ask the when, my husband comes home, and he's a director of a state association. He's, dealing with leaders all day and helping to make things better. And he made a comment that, hey, this guy asked about female coaches, and I told him to contact you, and I said, okay, this is a pretty normal thing. Hey, we're looking for female coaches. Is Candice the one female? Know any of them? Like, we don't have them like hidden somewhere under, they're not in like a bomb shelter that we're just releasing one by one, to like make you have to wait. I'm like, so it was pretty common in our house. And then he says, right after that, oh, and then I walk over to this field. This guy says something similar. And I said, politically correct answer is wonderful. I'm so glad they're thinking of that. Sure, I'll be happy to help. But then I also said, but you're my husband. I'm going to tell you my honest. I am so tired of them asking me where they're at instead of asking themselves, why aren't they coming to them? And so I go, but I've done that. I've gone to organizations, they've asked, and I've given them things to think about and consider about how they're set up. Are they female minority friendly in what they do? How do they view, diverse and different lived experiences than their own? How do they see that representation of the same person in every role with the same, skin color, the same gender type, the same accent, even in the game of soccer? It makes it feel like, well, I'm definitely going to be the outsider if I come into this. And how do they accept the outsider? I go, I'm so tired of them looking at this, and I'm done with the leaders. I'm going to go to the actual women that are working and find a way to solve it with them instead of trying to work above their heads so often, unfortunately, because they're not in the leadership roles. And that's where it started. I was just fed up with the conversations of leaders saying, oh, I want more. And I'm like, I've told you how to get more. And I'm going to try to go to the actual women working and support them. Give them tools to go to their organizations. Give them insights on ways to operate within the professional environments, to have that mindset that at times you're going to be kind of downwind to the bad stuff. You're going to be, a little bit, if we look at the equity of things, your starting point is not the same. What and how do you ask for these things? Like, that's where I'd rather go. That's where I'd rather spend my energy and time, knowing I only have so much in this lifetime to give. I'm going to go directly to those that need the help. And that's really where Fearless and Capable started to formulate into a more, I think this could work, a more formulated idea, plan, business, however we want to put it. But, and then the name really came out of the fact that it was two words that I kept coming back to because it's mindset and skill set. You can't want something but not be good enough at it. If you want it, you got to work at the skills in order to succeed. You can have all the skills but have all the lack of confidence, imposter syndrome, all this mindset that sets you back. We got to have both, and that's why there's a big and to it in trying to find ways that we develop not just the mindset to what the skill set, and put those two together more often. So sorry, long-winded answer, but that's kind of like how, boom, we get to the moment that it's starting to get real for what I'm going to do.
Yeah, no, that was great. That added so much context to Fearless and Capable and the rabbit holes that I've gone down, looking at the content and listening to you. I encourage everyone to do this, to search your name in Spotify or YouTube, and there's great materials out there. So hearing that answer along with what I've heard, gives me a great understanding of where it is, where it came from, and when it was time to do something about the issue at hand. And it sounded like you started with such intention, like you weren't gonna wait, like you needed to take action. And I think anything that's started with such intention is, there's no way it's not gonna be successful. There's no way it's not gonna work with that. And you touched on it with kind of the last part of your answer was maybe you don't have the skills, but you're going to work to find the skills. You're going to work until you can, you're going to make it work. And I think that's That's awesome. And it just kind of comes back to listening to that answer. It's bigger than you.
Oh, yeah.
And even with coaching, with your brand, is that something you kind of go back to? Is that something that you kind of live for, your purpose? It's bigger than you?
It's so much bigger than me. And what I try to showcase is how many other resources there are besides myself. And that's probably been one of the biggest adjustments, to be really vulnerable and honest, is that I didn't see myself as the resource. I saw myself as somebody who can collect resources and share them. Like, that had been my bread and butter. Like, oh, you need this? Here's who you need to talk to, or you need to read this, or this is the pathway to go. I knew. And then suddenly, like, I was like, but I have ideas and thoughts on how that could be done too. So it's been this really cool piece where I have an amazing platform to elevate other people. And yes, I'm very intentional about elevating women, but I'm very intentional about elevating people, and people that can make, the experience we have in sports, whether you're a player, an athlete, a coach, whatever, better. That you feel like there's a space you can be honest and vulnerable, that you can get ideas and knowledge and have somebody to talk to. It can be right here. And that's where Fearless and Capable, really, we started with trying to get mentors on board. And we have so many, and, so many not even on the website, that are kind of in the background that help me with certain, one-on-one situations where I'm like, you need to talk to her or him. Like, I'm helping you with this area of development. That's the next person you need to call. And those things are really important to me, that it's a reminder, one, to everyone, I'm just Candice, and I do have thoughts and ideas and ways that I think can help people, but I certainly do not have all the answers, and I'm always seeking ways and different thoughts and ideas, and so by doing that, I'm bringing on and trying to elevate those others and bringing that into space that it can be heard. And I'm really excited because we have our first couple interviews that will be released here soon on the Unbreakable and Fearless podcast, and just the two individuals we're starting with are people that are making the game better and just more unique in different ways. And knowing that story, knowing the why behind it in a similar way to you, it's really important. And it's also important to elevate what they're actually going to do to help sport be better, because, man, it's got to be better today and tomorrow. And so, yeah, it's always bigger than me. It's always bigger. And it's actually been really hard to be okay with, like, me kind of being a resource too. Like, that's been a very weird shift for me, that I'm still trying to get comfortable with. Like, it's not all about me. And people are like, but you can talk. I was like, I don't think so. I think we could probably put somebody else on stage, but it has been also really enjoyable, and something I'm finding to be very, very fun as well, and fulfilling.
I think that's so important too, that you're able to facilitate when necessary. I think that's something where, you can take on a lot, but just like you said, you don't have all the answers. No one has all the answers, and being able to facilitate and be okay with not knowing everything, or be okay with, I know a lot about this, but I know someone who knows a little bit more. I know someone who can maybe do a better job of explaining or showing you something than I can. I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of purpose, drive, motivation with starting this, but was there any hesitation? Was there any, I guess, fear? I think fear is probably the word that I've kind of come to terms with the last few months, and kind of doing a lot of, my own personal work and starting this too, is fear it's a real thing. It's not just something like, monsters under the bed. Like, it's a real thing. So was there any fear and hesitation with starting?
Oh, so much. I always go with fearless is not the absence of fear. It's seeing it, knowing it, taking it in, but then taking the next step forward. Like, that's the whole thing. We have it, we feel it, we acknowledge it, but we still take the first step forward. That's what fearless to me is that mindset that even though it's there, I'm going to take the step forward into what I want to do, or where I want to go. Yeah, but oh my, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about me crying into my pillow, me calling, my sister. I had my sisters. I was looking, when I was getting all the content together, I'm pitching it to my sisters and having them look, and man, like, I don't know if everybody's siblings are as critical as mine, but man, they are just boom, boom, boom. And, hesitating that I'm going to have this and am I going to make it work? And, we had done some things financially so that I could take the time to separate and really got into this as I kind of figured out what would be my next steps, because I knew the space I was in, I just could not stomach being in anymore. So I know I am of privilege. I do have that. And so I do realize that, that was something I had to recognize, is that I had the opportunity to step away and really focus all my energy on getting this off the ground. And, that took a lot, but even just that step, I remember telling people about it and just shaking and going, are they thinking I'm an idiot, or this is dumb and this isn't going to work? And, I had really good people that I could call, and so many women I called that, what would you want out of this? You see this is what I've created. What's the biggest thing you'd want? And I think, with the data that I collected on this, there was consistency and it's needed, but the avenue in which we look at mentorship and what it means to each person, it's so personal. But I also think it's so personal to where we're at. There are moments that I am much more gravitated towards groups of people. Like, I'm like, that, what is that group seeing or believing or, talking about? And then I gravitate towards them, and I find that group as like that more peer-to-peer mentoring. And that's when I need it moments. And then there's other moments that I've looked back and, that was what in these discussions were with women. They were saying, dude, I need someone to talk to. I need someone that I can be honest and vulnerable with. And then the other thing that was, coming out of these conversations with no consistency of one over the other, which was really the third thing, which was like, listen, I'm just somebody that my schedule is tight to meet with somebody one-on-one, to schedule a time to be in small groups. It's just not fit in my life right now. And I need the opportunity to kind of gather mentoring without having to talk to someone. And that's where what I was creating, which was trying to hit those three areas, was really coming to light, that there's nothing I'm cutting out. If anything, I need to keep all three in, which was a self-guided process of courses. It was the small group opportunities to talk to people with different expertise and different knowledge that come in. And then the opportunity to meet one-on-one with somebody. And so, part of me was like, well, I've thought of all this. What can I scrape out and really get a niche down to? And the answers were so varied that I was like, it's so personal. And if I can commit to trying to put these three types of mentorship in one system that's accessible 24/7 essentially to them, where they can gather, see, and connect, then we've got at least a starting spot. And no matter where you're at, and I think that's the biggest thing, is no matter where people are at, by their location, by the company or organization they work for, or even their position. A lot of women who get into leadership feel so lonely. This program's there. It's there no matter how isolated you feel. It's available to you. And that's the thing that I think is a big piece to really anybody working in the sports industry, is you start looking at, if you're the only one, you don't feel like there's opportunities, why stay? And this is what I hope I can try to help answer, is there's a reason to stay. There's an opportunity that you just don't know out there maybe yet that we can find, connect you with, and sometimes just make them feel a little less crazy about what they're experiencing. Because that, I hate using that term, but that's what a lot of women are going, I feel crazy. Like, is this really happening to me? And I'm like, well, I can't confirm it. You're the one experiencing it, but I can tell you, you wouldn't be the only one that's experienced that. And it's unfortunately data-wise not probably unlikely that you are experiencing some form of sexism or discrimination or microaggressions or things. And not that this program does all of that. That's certainly not it. The Fearless and Capable is about mindset and skill set. But the fact that there's so many women involved, it gives us that opportunity to really try to validate some feelings, while also then just saying, well, you just can't stew in the feelings. If feeling this way, what are you going to do about it? How are you taking the fear and moving forward? Like, that's got to be there. So to wrap up again, a very long, this is passion of me. So like, I'm sorry, I can go woo, but they're so scared. They're so scared about what the next step is. And I was so scared. And that's where there's some relatability to, you're still scared, but you take the next step forward, because if this is really what you want, fear is always going to be there. It's just what it is. So, yeah, pillows, crying into them, calling people crying, shaking, nervous, even this. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm not nervous. I'm always a little nervous. That's just, I don't know. Get used to it.
Someone right now somewhere is nervous to take that first step, is nervous to start something. And I think part of that, I feel like there's two sides to fear, right? It's fear of failure, and one thing I'm learning is, which sounds so crazy, but it's so real that I just have been coming to terms with, is there's a fear of success too, right? And what do you tell the person that's wanting to start something right now with a lot of passion, drive, like something so meaningful for purpose, but they're either have that fear of failing or fear of success? Like, I've never done this before. Who knows how big it can get, how much time this is going to take.
So here's where there's two things that I go to in a lot in these conversations. One, I put everything when we're talking about the decision to move, act, whatever, in terms of you have a decision to make, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to reflect, and then you're going to do something. So your decision comes from reflection and decision to move forward. And so what you're really looking at in a lot of ways is risk and reward, right? So what are the risks that are going to happen if this succeeds? What are the risks if this fails? What are the rewards that can happen if I succeed? What are the rewards that could happen if I fail? Because there can be rewards in failure when you really start to look at it. And that actually comes from combining data and feelings. Data and feelings. That's how I always put them together. Like, people are like, well, let's look at the data. And I was like, data's one part of the picture. If you're only looking data, you're missing what makes us human, what drives us, what makes us stop, what makes us go, what makes us hesitate. We've got to take in the feelings component. And if we're only looking at the feelings, we're not taking in some of that rational information that we sometimes need, that objectivity we need. So if we look at something we're going to move forward and we want to move forward, we desire moving forward in, it's almost this SWOT-like analysis. And I have this worksheet and I've done this workshop on it about anything we're looking to take on. There's a risk and reward. And how do you really evaluate what does risk and reward really mean? And we go back to, what's the data? So if you have a project you want to take on, what goes to the why? The why, that's data, the why of feelings, right? The the things that you want to evolve into. So you typically, when you create something, it's the 5-year business plan. Like, what's your business plan? What is it going into? Okay, well, 5 years from now, what do you see the data looking like, and where do you see yourself feeling, if this is the picture you're looking at? What is the feeling if that's not the picture you're looking at? So where can we bring these two things in of, how do I look at the decisions to have risk and reward? Because risk is not the failure. Failure is not, and there's so many people that say this, failure is an opportunity to grow. And it is so easily said and so much more difficult to do if you're not willing to take the time to reflect. So what I thought Fearless and Capable would be a couple years, into this, is it everything? Heck no. There's still things that I'm like, well, that didn't go as planned. But then there's unexpected things because of these things that maybe I haven't gotten to that I anticipated. But other things I've put energy that felt right, like I need to go do this, has risen other areas that I'm going, okay, but then that data point now, like, if I can take both of those, the risk of my success, is it really that much risk? And it can be financially, like, that's a big data point, right? The money is a data point that also has feelings. You can't ignore that. Cannot ignore that. So, how do you do this? And this is one of the workshop pieces, is you don't do it alone. You don't look at the risk and rewards, and you don't look at the data and the feelings by yourself. Mm-hmm. You have to branch out. And so I'm always a big proponent of finding your biggest supporter. Find the person that, man, no matter what happens, you lose all your money, every possession, and you're down to nothing, that person will still have your back. Who is that in your life? And if you don't have that, call me up. I will be that person for you. I'm not that for everybody, but I will be that if that's the person you're missing, Mm-hmm. What do they say? What are their data and feelings to what they know of what you're trying to accomplish or want to do? All right? Go to that person. Go to an expert in the field, not a mentor, an expert. So go to an expert that can give you information about the realities of what you're approaching. So I had a business coach, great human being, really great human being, so well-intentioned, but the style for me did not always match. And it actually left me feeling less than more walking into it. But I needed that experience of the data and the information he was giving me. The feelings weren't great, but the data was good. So I was like, all right, I can't just base my decision to move forward off of this one person. And I can't go to the person that supports me no matter what, because there's a lot of feeling there. There might not be a lot of data. Mm-hmm. So we're not just going to two people. So then the third person I want you to find typically is, how do I want to phrase this? Sometimes it can be, I don't know if you want me to swear, it's like an asshole. It's somebody who's just, no matter what you say, like they've always got something to counter back with you. Mm-hmm. And if you're that person, go find another person that you can willingly listen to. But you gotta find someone that's gonna try to cut through some stuff, because they're likely going to challenge both components of yourself, the data and the feelings. There's somebody I know in my circle that, man, I call him and I'm probably gonna be pissed when I get off the phone with him. However, he's got some decent points that I have to take into consideration in my decision, that risk and reward. And then the final person that I always say to, so again, you've got, your supporter, I call it the challenger, then, your expert, and then a mentor. Someone that is, again, in that space, and that's where I think mentorship lives so much more, is we live in that space to help you look at your reflections. Are you really reflecting in ways that are beneficial? Are you missing something? And then we also help with the decision you make forward, not by making it, but by giving you guidance, giving you resources, giving you knowledge and experiences we've had that you might want to consider. So a mentor does a really good job of, I think, in a lot of situations when you find a good mentor, being comfortable with your feelings, being okay challenging them, but not making you walk away pissed off more than you're okay. But then also giving you ideas and thoughts about how you can really go into the data of objectivity. And so, those are the people that I really hold into and say, okay, what value am I going to put? Where do I see data versus feelings that I can bring into it? But that doesn't start until I have my own reflection of it, which comes into the fear, the scared. But what am I scared of? Well, I'm scared of this. Go talk to my mentor about this. Go talk to the people that are going to challenge me. Go talk to those individuals and be honest about what you're scared with. See what they respond. But you got to be really good at just listening and taking it in and then reflecting on the information you get back. So that's something, and there's this kind of whole workshop I've created to try to help answer that. But it really boils down to, there's a whole lot of risk, but there's also a whole lot of reward, and rewards you won't even know, and maybe even acknowledge in the time that it happens. I'm really good at not realizing how good something is until it's passed. And then I'm like, okay, that was pretty sweet. I need to acknowledge that was actually pretty cool. I was at this women's, so I'm taking my A license through U.S. Soccer. So I'm at this women's mentorship program thing that they're running. And I'm actually now going to help that committee. How crazy is that? I went from, hey, I've got this, and I know somebody who knows I'm in this mentoring program, and now I'm being brought in to help U.S. Soccer with mentoring women, and it's awesome. But I'm in this, and I'm sitting next to Brandy Chastain, the 1999 PK, gold kid, takes off her shirt. That's who I'm sitting next to at a table talking about how we make the game better. That does not just come. Like, I have to acknowledge that there's things I've done to get me to sit at that table next to that individual at that moment. And not realizing that until kind of later of like, okay, that was kind of cool. Like, that wasn't just luck. Like, I worked my tail off to get there, but like, some of that comes from rewards that I would have never guessed, never put to what Fearless and Capable did, but it's helped to put me in those spaces at times. So, yeah, it's a lot of data and feelings.
I think on my way to the lake today, I try to go to the lake, take a walk every day, and I think I'm gonna play that back, because there's so many good nuggets in there. And two things in that is, well, one, in finding that those people you can kind of lean on and rely on. When I started this, I had a lot of people telling me, it's a good idea, it's a great purpose, and I loved that. But the one thing that I'll always take with me is, one of my friends who has his own podcast goes, dude, you got to fix your logo. And I was like, really? Like, that's feedback that I wasn't getting, and that was unique, and that's someone who's going to be real with me. And of all the people, I can't even tell you how many, like, I can't remember one person or one piece of, like, I guess praise, lack of a better word, for starting this, but that's something I'll always remember, is a friend telling me, dude, what's up with your logo? Like, so
Yeah.
I think that's important. And one thing I've taken from the Unbreakable and Fearless podcast, which, I'll link, and I think everyone should listen to, is, and I think you did a good job of touching on, is what's the ROI? Like, what's the return on investment for everything that you're doing? And I kid you not, like, at least once a day before I make a decision, or if I decide maybe not to edit that day, or decide to whatever, I do think of, what are the pros and cons of this decision here? And because of you and JC, so thank you for that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you. But it does, I think, for even just taking a short time to do like a little list of pros and cons, whether it's mental or whatever, actually the ROI on that time you spend alone, if you make the decision to move ahead, you're so much more efficient and productive. At least that's what I found in my spaces, when I'm like, all right, cool. I know I'm going forward with that. Boom. Like, my work rate, my intensity, my purpose and drive, like, soars so much more when I've done the time of reflection, instead of just going, where am I at? Which I still do. I'm not going to sit here and be like, every day I wake up with a pros and cons list. Y'all, I have not figured it all out. I just know tendencies that lend to success, and I also know my tendencies when I can look and go, yeah, I'm not doing what I should be doing right now. Like, it still happens. We're human. But yeah, I think that's very cool, and I appreciate the nod to the podcast. JC and I have enjoyed it. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, it's great to listen to. I do want to touch on coaching. I was listening earlier to a podcast, and I think you can apply it to sports. So there was someone was interviewing a manager for a record label, and they said that the artist's intentions should always be at the forefront of the manager. And I think there's sometimes a difference, what the manager might see as the best intentions for an artist might not be what the artist's best intentions are. And there's I think they both want to achieve something, maybe different avenues or routes to go about it. And I feel like that's so replicable in sports. And you having played, now you're a coach, I feel like I want to get that, your take on the athlete's best intentions are always, like, you want the best for an athlete, and the athlete wants the best for themselves, obviously. There's probably two different schools of thought, what they're thinking, what you're thinking. How do you build that trust? How does the athlete build that trust in you, and how do you kind of let them know early on that, hey, this is what I want for you? Because I feel like, a quote I heard was, the day you realize your parents were right, or the day your kids are telling you you're wrong. And I feel like it's got to be somewhat what coaching is like, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really good analogy of what the artist wants and what the manager wants, because, just even in even in some of the most scripted things, I look at baseball and I look at football where there's, time for plays and there's coaches throwing signals and the players have decisions and times to look at those. Man, that is not the sport I live in. Like, there's very few moments that I can really get direct player attention on me and what I would like them to do. So it's very much, and I still think, though, that exists, this artistry exists in every sport, because even if the coach tells you to do something, I have somewhat converted into a Chiefs fan. I'm not going to lie. Like, you live in here with Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of hard in Travis Kelce nod to be like, all right, this is kind of cool. So, not that I have completely abandoned the Bears, but, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm as I
wouldn't blame you if you did.
I know. I'm trying to find the word if I want to use, it's just been a rough go. But, Mahomes still has a decision to make. They still have choices on the routes. They still decide how to bat and where to put the ball, and all these things. These decisions are still within the athlete's decisions. And I think as coaches, when we take too much for ourselves, so that can start from, one of the things you asked me earlier is, I don't see it as just being myself. I'm not godlike. I am not godlike. I am 100% human with all the flaws, all the knowledge and all the misknowledge in my own. No, it's just not who I am. It's not who any of us are. And so as coaches, if we think we hold all of the answers, we're really doing a disservice to our athletes. So I think one of the things that I have learned, both through positive examples and through negative examples, in my time as an athlete and as a coach, are those that tend to succeed are the ones that bring in others to enhance the environment. You still set the direction, you still set the course, you still have a responsibility. You don't sit there as the manager and say, let's just see where things go. Like, that's not it. You have plans, and you should be accountable to those plans and those moments, those cultures, those, performance decisions, who's in, who's out. You still have to be responsible for those. But you still have a responsibility to enhance the environment with the people and the ideas that you can bring in. I've been going back. It's funny I'm talking to you. I've been going back and watching The Dance a lot. It's kind of sometimes my background, and watching, the Bulls dynasty and that whole thing is just so intriguing. And I've listened. I say I listened to Phil Jackson's book because I listened to it. I didn't read it on Audible, but certainly those individuals that I've looked up to are never doing it alone. They've got a vision, they have an idea, but they appreciate the artistry that comes from the athletes. And at times, that artistry is what we have to follow. We, as the coaches, have to follow it, and we have to trust it. And so I think, to second part, or your second part of how does that trust get created? Time, energy, purpose, authenticity. Like, if you're not willing to put in the time and know that it's not automatic, some are sooner than others. Man, there are players that I'm like, well, that was kind of easy. Like, they seem on board. And then there's others that I'm like, man, I hope by, end of the season, we're still on the same, we could be on the same page. Those are things that you have to be willing to do it, and respect that it's going to take different time for every person, because their lived experiences are coming into your relationship, whether you like it or not. Their lived experiences. So, it sounds like both of us had good experiences with our parents overall. Certainly there are athletes who do not have that parent figure or that environment that they grew up in from parents. And so, their trust for authority type figures can be different. It can be challenging. So, if you're coming in and time-wise saying, well, by this point I'll have this done with everybody, dude, you still got to have a direction, but you got to be responsible to the time that it's going to take and have respect for that. And I think that, it comes with your willingness to have honest conversations, but it also comes with an honesty in your listening. So, like, am I willing to listen to what you have to say and who you are? I I'm very clear with my players. I have an open door policy, but an open door policy does not mean, one, that I'm available 24/7. And second, it does not mean I take every suggestion and I do that. But if you're going to come in and you want to talk, I'm always willing to hear the suggestions, ideas. I do give them, hey, be prepared. I'm going to ask you questions. It's not because I'm challenging you. I'm really curious. And then two, I'm an inquisitive person. I ask everybody questions, so it's not personal. It's my way of discovering what I may not know yet, and I might gather from you. So don't be offended, but don't come in my office saying this, we should do this, and that's the end of it. Be ready. Have some like meat behind the idea. So that's how I treat it. But it's certainly things that take time, and they have to know that I'm going to be honest with them, but I'm also going to be honest to the process of listening, and that's where time can be, and being authentic is a big piece in that. And so, what I act like in the office, what I act like then on the sideline, what I act like when I'm in the middle of training, running an exercise, there can be variations of me, but there's that authenticity, that that kind of role modeling that I want them to know is that, and one of my players had a classic example, because another thing I do is I'm a U.S. soccer coaching instructor, so I teach coaches how to coach, essentially. And I had a player of mine in the space not too long ago, and the coaches that were in the coaching course didn't realize that a conversation had gone on before we went into the session, where I was actually kind of demonstrating an actual session. And they're warming up, and she goes, "Coach, J-Lo or Shakira?" I was like, oh man, Shakira, hips don't lie, and that was it. That was just her question. She actually asked me the other day, LeBron or Michael Jordan. I was like, don't even, like, it's always Michael Jordan. Yeah. But anyways, so, but what she then shared with these coaches at the end of the session, I didn't, have any clue, but we were just kind of talking about the importance of coaching and what influence it has. And she said, Candice will entertain questions like J-Lo or Shakira. But then when training starts, it starts. And by Candice's demeanor that she's ready to go. But you also know that after training's done, you could go Shakira, J-Lo again, and she'll still answer you. She doesn't exclude certain emotions or times, but she does role model when it's business and when we're getting to just being human. And the fact that she gives us the human side of her is a big piece of why I can trust her in the business side of things, is because she gives us all sides of her. She doesn't hide. She doesn't try to fake it. She just is real. And I think that was a huge compliment, despite it coming from the Shakira J-Lo conversation, is just that, an 18-year-old is looking and appreciating the fact that I might set down cones, but I'm still going to give her time to answer. I'm going to give her the time of day to answer a question like that. But it does. That authenticity will come through, and that rapport is built from the trust. And it's not trust of doing what they say. It's not trust of being there even 24/7. I mean, my players know that I have times I'm home with my kids. I will do anything if you're in an emergency. But if you're not in a great mood or you want to talk about something and I say, hey, can we have this tomorrow? They know at this point, because the trust and rapport is there, and I've role modeled it and I've been consistent. They know I'm in mom mode, and that's important too. And so they know they can have the conversation with me tomorrow. And then there's been times that it's been an emergency and I have shown up like I said I would. If it was an emergency after hours, I would show up, and I did. And that's the consistency. It's just that trust and honesty of what I say I'm going to do, I do. And, that gets created so that when they go off script and they do something I don't expect on the field, they don't follow the game plan, they change a tactic without me knowing it, but they do it and they solve it. I love it. Like, that is one of the things where I sit there and go, that wasn't on the game plan, but man, they made that work. And you get inspired by it. You get excited by it. And I think those are moments that, as coaches, if we're being too much about ourselves and too selfish about, our schedule, our way, our people, our things, we're doing a disservice. We've got to give some ownership. We've got to share. And we're going to get a lot further when we do, is we share it, and then we share it together, and we go further. So
that's awesome. Yeah, it really is the two-way street.
So two-way. And everybody that does it one way, I've seen crash and burn. Like, I can't think of a coach that does not inevitably crash and burn when it's only one way. I've just seen it too often. So
I have two more for you.
go for
One, actually, I have many more, but for time's sakes, I'll give you two. Are you aware of, or has it been realized, the messages, the realness that you're putting out there? Like I said, I kind of stumbled upon Unbreakable and Fearless, and it's
Yeah.
hit me like I said, every day. ROI. Okay, like, trying to take my life a little bit more serious now and optimize my day and time, and making sure I'm getting the most out of my 24 hours that I can. And I feel like a lot of people take a lot of things from you, whether it's from podcasting, whether it's from Fearless and Capable. And has it been realized? And because it's tough to see the forest from the trees, right? It's tough to kind of internalize it when you're in it. But have you had some of those moments where you are able to step back and be like, okay, like I'm actually, like, I'm doing it, and people are benefiting from what I'm putting out there, what I'm doing?
Yeah, there's been moments. Individual conversations. Somebody finds me. Someone says, "Oh, you're that fearless and capable person," or they're that fearless, or just little things. And listen, I was not this way 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that when I got to a point of I took shame that I had from a situation at Toledo, and that's part of my story, is being sexually assaulted by my head coach. When I took that as power and control over the narrative and the story, not even, even before this last summer when The Guardian wrote an article on it, before that I was taking control and power over it, and got doing this work, and I was so much more myself. So, though terrified and scared what people would think, still terrified and scared at times what people will think, it comes at such an ease, and my ROI, even if I don't always get financial returns or connections that I think, this is how much, ROI will come financially, or it will come in connections or networking or opportunities in the future. Even if that doesn't happen, like, every day I feel so much better going to sleep. Like, I sleep better now. When I kind of stripped myself of that trauma, and I owned what had happened, but I owned it in a way that was not my fault, and that it wasn't going to hold me back anymore. Like, that just, man, like, my life dramatically changed. I had unhealthy habits. I still have unhealthy habits. Like, I'm not sitting here going to be like, I've got it again, all figured out. I don't. But was drinking way too much. Trying to numb things. I was not working out very well. Just my behaviors in general as a mom and as a spouse and a sister and I just was half doing it just because I didn't know how to operate. I didn't know what I liked about myself. I think that was big. I didn't know what to like about myself. And, a lot of that stems from trauma. And those are things in layers that people don't necessarily always understand or get to see, is how trauma can manifest in ways that you don't quite comprehend. Like, you hate yourself and you don't know always why you're hating yourself, or you're so distrustful of your decisions and you're not certain why you can't just trust your decisions. But it comes through in that. And so I think somebody, and a lot of us actually have trauma that we don't always process. And it's not, most of us are walking around with trauma. That's not a me, and it's a real reality. And there's varying levels. I'm not someone who believes one is more worthy of our time and our ears and our love and energy than another trauma. It's all worth our time and energy to understand. That's why I'm doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get trauma-informed training to be a part of the athletic experience that a lot of us have. It's in our academics, whether we know it. Our teachers, administrators are trauma-informed. A lot of athletic spaces are not. The sports industry is not trauma informed in a lot of cases and scenarios, especially in the youth world, especially in collegiate environments where you're still dealing with kids that have dealt with things or coming into that young adulthood. But you come into it and then, discovering yourself wherever and however that happens, do the work to get there. Just like you're doing, like, man, it can sometimes suck and it's hard and you're like, this is even doing anything. Is it worth the time? It's so worth it, because I actually had this discussion with my husband yesterday as like, could we have imagined what's happened and the opportunities I'm getting now 2 years ago? No, it's not even in the realm of possibility of what. And that's what I said, the risk and reward. There are things in the reward category right now that I did not put in the reward category 2 years ago. And some of the risks that were there 2 years ago are still in the risk category. It's not like it's locked and loaded and things are just moving. It's a lot of reflection time. But yeah, I love so much more the parent I am, the spouse I am, the sibling I am, the daughter I am, all of the friend I am. I love that version of myself so much more than I ever did. And the coach I am now, man, the coach, that's, if you listen to the podcast enough, I think I've apologized to JC like 2 or 3 times, because I yelled at that team. I coached her when she was 12, and I yelled at that team so differently than I would do anything now. And it's so just stemmed in education and lived experiences. So, do the hard work, do it, feel free to be your best version, your best self. But I will say that, sometimes some people's most authentic version, they say, is harmful to others. And that's my best version is hitting my values, which my values are really in what other people I can do to contribute to their happiness, their aha moment, their light bulb, or just even their support. So that's where my values lie. And my hope is that for people saying, well, I'm living authentically, well, how does that tie into the values you have and the principles you try to live by? And, there's some people have the values and stuff really, really well defined. I have this core, but the definition sometimes ebbs and flows on how I discover it, or I see it differently. And like, I had something today. I had a meeting with a coaching candidate that I've been working with for a couple months, but I worked with her over a year ago, and had no idea. Well, I eventually figured out she kind of ghosted me, and I was like, I thought like I was helping you. I thought this was like, all right, cool. Like I'm going to mentor, and then she went just rogue, and I was like, what happened? And then I got a call from her. She had a stroke. She's, not very old, had a stroke, completely turned her world upside down, medically, with her family, everything. And coaching was a big piece of that. And she just finished her D license with me. And we were just talking about the fact that when I talked to her, when she finally said, hey, this is what's going on with me medically. And I said, whenever you're ready to come back, just call me. Like, don't hesitate. I'm here no matter what. But when you're ready to come back to coaching, because it sounds like you still want to, and it's hard to decide, but if that moment hits you, like, don't hesitate. Like, you can come back. And she goes, the fact that, one, you were going to be the teacher or the coaching educator, that helped. But the two was just knowing I had safety to come back to was a huge piece of that. And I think that's a big piece that we all need to realize, is that we don't have to be perfect today, tomorrow. We don't know who we are today, tomorrow, but we can know ourselves eventually and have people that are still rooting for us behind the scenes years and years down the line. So just remember that.
Yeah. Well, that's so important. And just like what you said, going back to like the values and what you just ended with it, things change, values change, role models change, morals and what you value changes, and that's okay. And oftentimes it changes for the better. So it's okay if it's not there yet. It'll come. Last one, something I always end with is, what makes your story so unique, but also so relatable and so achievable for someone who wants to do a lot of the things you're doing, wants to start a brand, start, coach wants to make positive impact in others' lives and really have it come down to it's bigger than them.
Yeah, I'm glad you said what makes it relatable, because I was like, I don't know if it's so unique as much as it's just honest and out there. If that's so, that might be the most unique piece, is that I do try to put. I don't know. I don't know why Kim Kardashian came in my head, because Kim's, that to me, that's like fake authenticity. Like, it's just trying to be genuine. I don't try to overpromise. I don't try to, set low expectations then over deliver just to wow you. I try to be quality, sometimes quality over quantity in what I do. And that really brings me to being able to say, this is just how I've spent my days. This is how I've spent my hours. This has been the reality of the years I've had. And it's not about however 30 some years I've, been here on the earth, but it's really about the quality of each of those moments, and the moments that were terrible and the moments that were great and everything in between. So I think the uniqueness is really just coming out of the fact that I am getting more comfortable to say what it is, but that's because it's just like, why are we hiding what really happens? If we're going to get to solutions, I don't know. Like, I don't know why it's in my head right now. I've never thought of it this way, but like, if you make a cookie recipe and the cookie sucks, do you just throw the cookie away, or do you look back at the recipe and go, what didn't work? Did I follow something? Or if the cookie, you do it exactly right, and then the cookie's like, it could be better. I could make this better. Then you adjust the recipe and you add something to it. And so I think if you're not sitting back and looking at what you're doing and seeing what you missed or what you could add, and you don't see yourself as somebody that, if you're in that thought process of identifying what's missing or what's being added, and you can see those things and you're not telling anybody about it, light the firecracker under your booty and find someone to go tell them, because that's an amazing skill set to fill the void. And even if you think someone else has, chances are they haven't figured it out with your lived experiences and your unique story. Like, come bring it. Like, throw it out on the table. Let's see where and how it evolves what we're currently doing and how we can make it better. So I think that's where there's so much relatability to all of us are experiencing things and looking back and going, what did I miss, or what did we collectively miss, or how the heck do we make it better? So throw the ideas out there. And if you start to feel really, really passionate about one thing versus another, do the risk and reward. Go talk to other people, because it doesn't even have to be through starting a business. It doesn't have to be through those things. It can just be through your own organizations, your own interactions, that you just take on not a new, but it's an enhanced way of operating. Like, I'm just finding a new way to operate. And the way I'm operating now is a heck of a lot more efficient than I was doing it before. But I still was a mom who was feeding my kids and trying to get work and pay the bills and try to talk to my friends. And I was still doing that, but I was also operating in a way that wasn't going to then let things be more enjoyable. And that's really what I've done, is I've just changed my operational procedures and found a way to enhance. And my experiences, I don't think are that unique. I think that's one of the things that I've unfortunately discovered by being open. It's fortunate but unfortunate, is that the trauma club is so big, and that's what, there's not really typically a week or so that goes by where somebody else doesn't say, hey, I've had something similar, or a sibling or a friend or a child or a parent had something kind of similar to your story, or I'm just a victim of abuse, and how that conversation goes. It doesn't really happen without a week, but the thing I'll say to them is, I hate to tell you this, you're a part of a huge club, but I also want you to know you're a part of a huge club, which means there's a lot of us out there that can support and give you resources and be there for you during the worst of the days, the best of the days, and everything in between. So for what's unique is really not that unique, which is sad and scary, but also sometimes reassuring that I'm not as unique as I thought I was several years ago before I let everybody know what happened to me. But then at the same time, I think there's a relatability just because who you get on this podcast is who you're going to get if I'm coaching you or I meet you at the bar at, I would say 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I'm old now, so it's like probably like 6:30. I'll see you at the bar for like the early drink specials and then I'm out because I get tired. But I mean, those are the realities, is that I don't want to live and try to fake it anymore in any other spaces. And I've just made that decision, is that I'm tired of trying to go in and be something I'm not, because that hasn't got me anywhere. I got a lot further actually being myself, with all the and awkwardness that I believe I bring. It's still just, that's the unique part. Maybe it's just how I put it out in the world. So yeah, I don't know if that answered it, but that's my thoughts on that part.
No,
so.
that definitely answered it. Thank you. And thank you so much. Like I said, I listened to Unbreakable and Fearless, and now I get that on my own podcast, and I think that's really cool. So thank you for taking the time. All my guests have been awesome, but I felt like I had to come a little bit more prepared and a little bit more sharp today, and I think that's just a testament to you, what you've done, what you've accomplished, what you are doing and will do. So thank you, and all the hats that you wear is awesome, and it's really cool to see it from afar.
Well, I can tell you, these questions have been fantastic. Like, these are questions that I'm going to take into my own world, because they were really good. They were thought-provoking. They were different than some of the other standard questions I get, even though if they had some common threads, they were very good. So well done.